The Bahama Mama has been relegated to the trash heap of tropical drinks that are now considered boat drinks. Drinks found more often in a TGI Fridays or an Applebee's than a well-respected tiki bar. But it wasn't always this way. The drink did originate in the Caribbean, most likely between 1957 and 1960, but according to Martin Cate, who contributed to the Oxford Companion to Spirits and Cocktails, the Bahama Mama showed up at the Beverly Hills Trader Vic's in 1961. While it can't be confirmed, it appears the Bahama Mama was first made at the British Colonial Hotel in Nassau. This luxury hotel was run by George Bob Gill Jr., who would be better known up north in Fort Lauderdale for developing 6 properties. Gill was considered by some to be a marketing genius. He was responsible for getting the Yankees to Fort Lauderdale for spring training from 1961 to 1992 and renamed his Clipper Hotel to the Yankee Clipper. He helped bring spring break to Fort Lauderdale, and most importantly, to those like you and me, each of his hotels offered an elaborate rum drink where his bartenders would learn to make these drinks at a bartending school set up by Gill. The Hillsborough Hotel in Tampa featured the Floridita daiquiri, the Yankee Clipper served the El Moro, the Escaped served a banana daiquiri, the Salute was featured at the Jolly Roger, and the Sundowner at the Tradewinds, and of course the Bahama Mama at the British Colonial in Nassau. The Bahama Mama was from, you guessed it, the Bahamas, and the name Bahama Mama was not new to the drink. In 1932, a song came out called Bahama Mama, You Tropical Charmer, and later in the 1950s, calypso dancer Dottie Lee Anderson took the name Bahama Mama. But the original recipe for this one is unknown, as is the one that was served at Trader Vic's in 1961. The drink isn't mentioned much at all in the 1960s, and the first recipe that featured rum in a Bahama Mama didn't show up until 1970 from the Down Under restaurant, which was not in the Bahamas, but Fort Lauderdale, Florida. That Bahama Mama featured rum, orange curacao, orange juice, lime juice, bitters, and grenadine. In the Oxford Companion, Cate says the Bahama Mama fits the definition of an exotic cocktail. Cocktails like the Planter's Punch, 1 of sour, 2 of sweet, 3 of strong, 4 of weak, and a little bit of spice to make it nice. That sounds a lot like this cocktail when you break it down. Another restaurant in Fort Lauderdale, the Mia Marina, also served a Bahama Mama in the early 1970s with the same ingredients as the one that was served at the Down Under. By the mid-1970s, the Bahama Mama starts showing up in advertisements for hotels in the Bahamas. From the Bahama Princess to the Grand Bahama, by the late 1970s to early 1980s, the drink seems pretty commonplace, from resorts to Chinese restaurants to even bars in Chicago, where we see a Bahama Mama with banana, papaya juice, and fruit punch. Now, around the same time, the New York Times shared a syndicated piece which has a reference to the Bahama Mama, but this was a drink with rum, orange juice, and creme de cacao. By the end of the 1970s, we see a couple more recipes for the Bahama Mama, one with cream of coconut and triple sec, the other with Nassau Royale, a vanilla and tropical fruit liqueur that was made by Bacardi until being discontinued in 2019. The recipe with the Nassau Royale shows up often, sometimes with cream of coconut and other times with a coconut rum. Finally, by 1987, we see the Bahama Mama with Kahlua. Yes, Kahlua, the coffee liqueur, which you can still find often in the Bahamas. So there is no consensus on the original recipe or even the popular recipe from the 1970s and 1980s, and the only thing common between them is rum and orange juice. Most included grenadine, more than half contained pineapple juice, but we see the liqueur range from an orange to a chocolate to a vanilla banana and even coffee. Some call for coconut rum, others call for cream of coconut, and some a coconut liqueur like Malibu. But for the cocktail that we're going to make today, let's go back to Fort Lauderdale in 1970 to a drink with rum, orange curacao, orange juice, lime juice, bitters, and grenadine. I'm going to put this in the drink mixer, but you can always shake this. I'm going to start with 2 dashes of Angostura bitters, 1 ounce of fresh lime juice, 1 ounce of orange juice, a 1/4 ounce of grenadine, half an ounce of an orange liqueur, 1 ounce of a light rum, and 1 ounce of a dark rum. So there you go, the Bahama Mama from the 1970s. All right, let's try it. I mean, it's pretty good. It doesn't taste like what the expectation is of a modern day Bahama Mama. It has a pretty intense orange flavor from the orange juice as well as the orange liqueur. Good amount of brightness from the lime juice and then the grenadine. And I did sort of will this into being a better version, probably than what it originally was. I did use the lime juice, the orange juice. I did use fresh homemade grenadine. I had a video recently where I shared all of the essential syrups you need for, tiki and tropical cocktails. I really love using a fresh grenadine from fresh pomegranates, or if you can find the pomegranate arils. So I'll link to that video right here if you want to see how to make that syrup. And then for sure, we're not using the JM Shrub orange liqueur, but that's one of my favorite orange liqueurs. It has just like a touch of the grassy notes from, being based on an agricole, but it also has kind of that cognac flavor that you get from something like Grand Marnier. So it ends up being not nearly as sort of bright as the Clement Creole Shrub, but it's not as, I think, like heavy as Grand Marnier. It's like a nice in between there without blending your own. So that comes through a lot. And then the light rum, the Denison, I just like that Denison. You can't taste it here. That's a rum that's going to get lost in anything outside of daiquiris or really simple drinks. And then I wasn't trying to keep it in the Denison family, but I wanted to find a dark rum that was at least 50, and I didn't want to go too much over 50% ABV. And the vatted dark is just to provide a lot more flavor as a base with our rums here than you would if you just use a typical 40% ABV dark rum. That also has a pretty good color. It's not too dark. I didn't want to use like a super dark black rum because I didn't want it to like muddy out the colors here. So this Bahama Mama, it's pretty good. But I do think having a different liqueur in here besides orange would open it up to more tropical flavors. I've never had or seen that Nassau Royale. I'm sure some of you have, especially if you travel to the Bahamas. Cannot buy that now. Discontinued in 2019. I've tried to find reviews of it, and there's very little out there. But it seems to be a vanilla and banana, possibly, type flavor going on. So I had considered using Liquor 43 and then also using a banana liqueur. I think that would be probably make this even better just with some of the flavors, because the grenadine is there for some sweetness, but it's in the background. I think replacing that with those liqueurs would be very interesting. And I think I want to do that in a slushy, because you can also just swap out the Liquor 43 and use a vanilla syrup, because you're going to need that extra sugar in a frozen drink. So that would probably be delicious. And using the rest of this, with the lime juice, orange juice, and the rums. If you look at this cocktail as we made it, it seems very familiar. I don't know if there's another cocktail that's just like this one or not, but it's very familiar to so many of those mid-century, tropical tiki cocktails with a couple juices, couple rums, and an orange liqueur. In fact, I think if you go through those old Trader Vic's books, you will find a lot of cocktails like this minus the orange juice, just a couple rums, lime juice, and grenadine. That comes up all the time. So it's not the most inventive drink, but over the years, because there hasn't been a real concise recipe that everyone knows, it's turned into just a collection of juices, a collection of rums with a splash of grenadine for color. I honestly don't know if I've ever had one of those at a place like TGI Fridays or Applebee's or Chili's or wherever those are served. I've never been to the Bahamas when I was of drinking age, so I haven't had it there either. So if you have a Bahama Mama recipe that you love that is, from the Bahamas or anywhere, let me know in the comments below. I'd like to see what you think a Bahama Mama is, because a lot of people, including some hotels in the Bahamas right now, that they put Kahlua in it, and that is a possibility that original one had Kahlua, but all the signs point to it being like this. And while I can't be certain of this, there's just too much of a tie-in to Fort Lauderdale having this recipe, though, as far as I've seen, one of the oldest printed recipes, even though it is a good 13 years after the recipe's first made by Bob Gill for his hotels, but having one in 1970 come out and then one shortly after that are not connected to his resorts, and having those be this cocktail in Fort Lauderdale, I think it's just sort of one of those things where I'm not always looking for a coincidence and leaning on a coincidence, but sometimes the coincidences turn out to be useful until someone finds a recipe. Otherwise, if we could find that recipe from Bob Gill from 1957, that would be the official original Bahama Mama. So that's it for this one. An interesting look at the history of the Bahama Mama. I didn't know any of this until I started looking into this cocktail more. And I do love that there is just a little bit more to this cocktail than what meets the eye. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like below. Consider subscribing to this channel. If you want to support this channel more, go check out the Patreon page. And otherwise, I'll see you on the next one.